we're going to have Michael Gord take over. Mike, where are you sitting right now? Because it looks beautiful.
Maldives, Paradise Islands, or Paradise Islands, I should say.
Nice. Well, we look forward to having you join us in Dubai shortly. And
yes, see you tomorrow, perhaps.
Yeah, see you tomorrow. I'm really excited for this next panel about the metaverse and the open internet. And we'll have two guests joining us, James Ashton and Matty Soudagar. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tatiana, and thanks, James and Matty, for joining us. Just to provide a bit of a background, I'm not sure whether the audience right now has heard of the metaverse, but it is essentially the next iteration of both blockchains and the internet. And from the intersection of blockchains, the internet, and virtual reality, we are able to now create immersive internet experiences, which is, I think, going to, the entire internet is going to become three-dimensional. Matty and James are two of the earliest adopters of NFTs, and in particular, land NFTs in the metaverse. So, and specifically Decentraland, but I think you guys might have exposure in other metaverses as well. So excited to hear about both of your perspectives. So James comes from, as one of the, I think probably one of the largest landholders in Decentraland, and one of the creators of some of the biggest districts. So James, you mind giving a background on yourself, how you got interested in the metaverse, and how you got to where you are?
Actually, hi, Michael. So I was first into Decentraland in 2017. So I just narrowly missed the ICO, and I didn't know anything about the metaverse. I knew, in fact, all I knew about this sort of technology that involved was that I'd use VR, and I knew it was basically based on the blockchain. So after the ICO, I actually missed that, and I was lucky enough to get involved in a post sale after that, and then I just embedded myself into the community. And in the early days, the districts in Decentraland were founded by a bunch of the community members who were around at that time. The founders, suggested that we put proposals up, and on a GitHub area, and then we had a sort of Kickstarter style effort to sort of rally people into our individual projects. And from there, the Decentraland formed the districts. They basically defined a map, put out the districts, and then after that they basically auctioned off the rest of the land, and that was the beginning of Decentraland. So from there we then had like a real community, a project to like align what we were doing in terms of the direction of these districts, and then the build started. And then it was early 2018, and then it's literally been like a project of keeping up with Decentraland on the technical level, and then exploring the whole evolution of the NFT space, which has actually underpinned Decentraland and other metaverses like it. And today, I think Decentraland is a patchwork of digital land, which are NFTs, and those lands can have three-dimensional applications and solutions built on top of them. And as we go forwards, it's starting to manifest like a city of digital content, which you can walk around and explore. So, I think it's literally, the metaverse is the sort of, it's beyond the physical universe, and it's evolving in the same way.
Thanks, James. And just to confirm, you are fully focused on the Decentraland metaverse, or are you exploring all of the metaverses? In terms of hands-on and my involvement, I'm 100% focused on the Decentraland metaverse. However, I do participate in sort of cross-metaverse communities. I engage in debates with members of some of the other ones, and we explore ideas. So even though I'm hands-on dedicated to the Decentraland metaverse,
I would say that I feel part of the overall sort of community of the blockchain-based metaverses.
Very much so. Thanks, James. And over to Matty. So you're also one of the earliest adopters of both NFT technology as well as Metaverse land. You're actually one of the guys that got me into Metaverse land and the collection of virtual real estate. So hats off to you for that. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one. And it's been really interesting watching your career progression from the sidelines, seeing you develop from a collector to a huge part of the ecosystem, and now you're starting your venture fund. So I think it would also be worthwhile for the audience to hear your background, how you got started, and what you're doing now.
Can you guys hear me? Check.
Yeah, now we can.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Michael. And hey, everyone. Pleasure to be here. My name is Matty. I started in the land of crypto in 2017, kind of rode the wave up, rode the wave down. And on the way down, pretty much learned about Decentraland. And I just so happened to fall upon a Discord channel or a community where people were buying and selling virtual land. And for me, that was very fascinating. I didn't really do much with, and I didn't even know there were NFTs. I didn't really know much about the technology. All I knew was that I needed to install a MetaMask to participate in this crazy marketplace where people were buying and selling lands from, hundreds of dollars to tens of thousands of dollars to sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. So to me, it was just like the perfect thing to do because I love this sort of environment, right? So for the next 2 years, I immersed myself in this world, and I bought and sold land. And then NFT technology grew from representing just land and collectibles to art, game items, and so much more. On Twitter and YouTube, I go by the name DCL Blogger because Decentraland DCL was the first content project that I used to cover in terms of YouTube and Twitter. And then as NFT space grew, I remained a DCL blogger, but continued to talk about art because everything kind of intersects. Decentraland has become a place where people put virtual galleries and then hang their NFT art on the wall. It's become a place where people put DeFi banks. It's become a place where you can go and play games and wear NFTs as wearables and win game items as NFTs. So it's kind of become like this visual experimentation, kind of like an Ethereum, but in a visual sense, where you can, like James said, you can buy some land in hot areas and you can run a conference, you can run art galleries. But for Decentraland or any of these virtual world projects to be successful, the whole ecosystem around it needs to be successful. So I was very excited to see the art space grow, and I jumped in and I tried to grow that. And there's so much people, Decentraland just becoming, half of it's just becoming like art galleries because these art collections are becoming, multi-million dollar in the 7 to 8, sometimes 9-figure ranges. And these people need galleries to show them off and meetups and all that sort of stuff. So we're finding use cases come out of this ecosystem growth. And I've become an investor in NFTs, in cryptocurrencies, involving NFTs in equity in projects, building it with NFT technology, and just so immersed in the space. And I love exploring the art, gaming, virtual land, and everything and beyond. And as Michael said, I'll be starting a venture fund soon to go after these assets and hopefully be a major play in the area. So happy to be here, happy to connect with people like James and anyone that's building in the space and doing more in the NFT space.
Thanks, Matty. And so as you said, you started with Decentraland, and you've started to expand your collection, let's say, to other asset classes. That really Decentraland, I would say, is the proof of concept for metaverses, and has the most significant scale by quite a margin at the moment. But just same question as James, is your scope and interest or focus, I should say, still 100% Decentraland in the metaverse category, or and obviously as James mentioned, it is agnostic. It's super blue ocean, and all metaverses scaling adds value, and they'll all be interoperable. But are you 100% focused your efforts on Decentraland as well?
I would say Decentraland is my first love, and I love the community. I love the team. I've got to know them for 2 to 3 years. It's definitely going to be the main party that I continue to bring value to. But it would be silly, in my opinion, to ignore everything happening around you, right? Because the true metaverse is going to be a connection of everything. So I need to know what's happening in the sandbox. I need to know what's happening in the Somnium space. And as James said before, he participates in the community, and I think the community strength grows in multitudes if you connect. So I am exploring the different places, but in terms of the network that comes my way, the community events that I run, it's all Decentraland focused at the moment. But it's exciting to see what's happening around and see if there's some interoperability that can be done.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So you guys are two of the earliest adopters. You've been in, well before we began to participate, and in the early days, even when we were at the party, it was the conversations with real world big businesses was very. They were extremely not receptive because the model for Decentraland was extremely, and the model for metaverses in general was extremely unproven. There were at maximum hundreds of users that could even possibly be signed in. So the value for big businesses to think about it, it was really difficult. At least from my perspective, I'd love to hear how you guys, and maybe starting with James with Vegas City and with Festival District, how the conversations have changed. Let's from 2 years ago, or when you first started, to let's say just the last month, when last 2 months, when NFTs have started to explode, and then perhaps considering the conversations that you're now having, what you anticipate being a timeline for mainstream mass adoption.
So, I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of the actual adoption of this festival, the timeline of that. I think that we're right at the beginning. So I think, as you say, a year or so ago, you're looking at 100 people in there, and I think that over the past sort of 3 months, we're starting to actually see the sort of trend of what looked like the first impression of exponential growth in Decentraland. So, just as a finger in the air, I started to just look onto the Discord server at the rate at which new people were adding into their welcome channel, just as an idea, as a finger in the air. And, the number of people coming into that now is shocking. I mean, I actually, early last week, during one of the absolute spurts of Decentraland, I looked and I measured an average of one person per minute adding onto that Discord. So I cast forward the clock, just how big that Discord would be at the end of this year if that stayed static, and we were looking at 500,000 people, like a 20x increase on the current population. So just going back to a year or two ago, I was in Vegas City very early on, trying to drum up some initial interest, and it was a very, very different conversation. So I think one of the examples I always use is that I got in touch with Caesars, because obviously I thought that the pinnacle company to basically have in Vegas City would be Caesars Palace, basically. So I thought in my naivety, 2 years ago, that I would be able to just kind of walk in and actually get interest. And on a technical level, they were super interested, and the technology interested them, and we escalated the conversation from a couple of Europe-based board members to their new markets and new tech team in the States. And they were very interested in what we were doing technically, and it did fire their imagination. But there was 2 sticking points, and those sticking points were the fact that it was built on top of crypto, and the fact that the user counts, just weren't there for them to even be able to imagine stepping foot into it. But since then, we then forward the clock 2 years, and I think people in my position are starting to feel overwhelmed for the sort of first time in Decentraland, just by the sheer number of people wanting the conversation. And as it's happening now in Vegas City, we're incepting new partnership projects, a couple of new projects a week for the past few weeks. So we're now having to, grow the team to meet that. It's night and day. And in a 2-year period, I've seen most of that growth in the last 3 months.
Yeah, I think that the exponential growth I expect to only continue. And Matty, from your perspectives and the conversations that you're having with your investment audience, I wonder how the conversation has changed, and if you extrapolate that, what your perspective is on when we are going to see this push into the mainstream.
I think COVID has accelerated the use case and the acknowledgement for a virtual space, and the acknowledgement that companies need to experiment with the new age of tech in the digital space. You know, COVID really accelerated that sort of thought and a mindset. So I kind of felt, you know, that along with the fact that DeFi kind of picked up in you know, massively in the mid last year, which in order to participate with, you needed to download a MetaMask and get a digital wallet and understand these tools. And what people weren't realizing at the time were these are the same tools you would need to participate in NFT projects. So I kind of saw that, you know, there was a boom in the NFT space mid last year, which lined up really well with the DeFi craze, and obviously COVID bringing a lot of people to the space. And then now I definitely am having a lot more conversations with companies that want to explore Decentraland. There's just so much use case here that it's kind of like, you know, people are realizing what can be done with NFTs, and that's also what's blowing up the space, is because it's so uncharted. You know, every time there's a use case that fits the audience or the demographic perfectly, it just blows up. You know, NFT art is a perfect example. NBA Top Shot collectibles is another perfect example. And you know, people are experimenting with what's the next step. So Justin Blau, a DJ, he dropped, you know, 50 art pieces as an NFT token. And you can take that token to Decentraland, and there's a club that Justin Blau has, which you can only enter if you own his art piece as an NFT token. And in that club, he plays unreleased music, which was an epic experience, or an epic value add to his art collectors. And I think, you know, Metacoven, he did a B20 drop, a token cryptocurrency. You know, he launched the B20 token, which was a representation of his 20 pieces of Beeple collection, which people are estimating that to be $50 to $100 million plus. And he used Decentraland, CryptoVoxel, Somnium Space to do this sort of a launch. You know, DG token, which was the casino in Vegas City. They have a cryptocurrency which they launched. They've got virtual casinos. So all this sort of use cases are starting to become more apparent. And people are looking at these and realizing that Decentraland is definitely a cool signaling tool. Like if you launch on Decentraland, and we've had like 20 to 30 HQs from Binance to Kraken to Matic to Game Credits to, you know, like all these projects launched because it makes sense to them that it's a signaling tool that, hey, you know, you are part of the NFT community. So all these use cases are now becoming apparent. And so I'm definitely getting a lot of inbound from companies that want some sort of an anchor into the NFT space where they do all this effort, where's their home, where's their presence, and it makes sense to have a virtual
one. Definitely. So Matty, you bring up a couple of good points there. We've spoken about how the investment numbers are going up, how the interest in from real world businesses to mirror their real world experience in the metaverse is also picking up, and the conversations are getting a lot more exciting. And then you brought up how Blau is using NFTs in super creative ways to add additional value to his fans. I'd love to focus on that we've got about 5 more minutes. And for us to consider, so, you know, it's easy for someone on the outside to look at what we're doing with metaverses and NFTs and, oh yeah, cool, virtual land collectibles, virtual art, awesome. What is the truly what are some of the truly revolutionary components of the metaverse that you know, take the internet to the next level in terms of usability and functionality?
James, sorry, mate, go on.
No,
I was open question.
I was going to basically, I mean, there's so many examples, like technically complicated examples, you know, such as a casino, which is decentralized, where, you know, spaces inside that casino are tokenized and actually earn a rent for the owner of the NFT. So an actual dynamic functionality that's built into the NFT rather than, just a collectible. But I think the metaverse, in terms of the unique thing that's represents the next phase of the internet, is I think something that was spearheaded by Matty, and we have an example of that, which is the Vegas City Arts Village, which is actually a social community of 80 plus people who have all built their own art gallery, and they're all displaying their own art collection in it, and they have their own community. We had a launch party. It was a street party, with a big light show, Vegas City style, and it actually represents a social community, on the web, and that's backed by things like Discord channels. And I think that's actually representative of the unique thing that this brings, and I think that is the expression of the next phase of the internet more than anything else for me.
And Matty?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to add to this, but before I add to this, I had a really cool question that came my way that was to kind of define the differences in the other virtual projects. So I think really quickly, Decentraland aims to be, a decentralized space where there's governance involved, so people that own mana or land can govern on the decisions that, do we want to add more land? Do we want to have this DJ come in and perform? The community can vote on that. There's multiple decentralized aspects of it, and I think James can dive into that later on. But it's a 3D world, whereas Crypto Voxels is a voxel-based world. Also a very, very strong community there. Somnium Space is VR. You can buy land there as well. Axie. So we've got the Sandbox. The Sandbox is kind of like a gamified Minecraft version where if you own land, you can build gaming experiences there. So it seems to be going the way of like a big gaming universe where you can own land next to Atari, have a game. Atari can have their games. You can teleport from game to game, kind of like Roblox. So I kind of compare these to like VR chat, Roblox, Minecraft, all these major players that all exist independently, but provide a different value and have a different community, which you can cross or go to certain ones to, experience. So to answer your question, Michael, I think the value proposition is immense. I think what NFTs will allow you to do is unlock value of anything digital, right? Anything, we can't even comprehend what this means. People are selling tweets as NFTs. People are selling, tattoo spots on their body as NFTs. NFTs can represent anything of ownership. It's crazy what's being done. And if you go to a virtual world like Decentraland, and obviously I'm just using Decentraland because that's what I'm most familiar with, but this is going to probably be open to all of them. But if you go to Decentraland, then suddenly, the name that you have that could be very unique. I have the name Satoshi Nakamoto. I have wearables that were some of the, yeah, I've got the name Neo. I've got some really cool ones, but some really, really cool, from your name to the building on your land, to the art on your gallery, on your, if I'm holding a conference, I can put art on the wall as an NFT, which if someone likes it, they can go and buy it straight away. So if I'm getting thousands of people to my conference, they're familiarizing to this art, they'll be like, who's this artist? So suddenly they go to this virtual place where everything is viable, from the name to the wearable to the avatar. And I think it'll become like this space where digitally assets are just going to move through blockchain extremely fast. And so you'll be able to take this wallet of value, sometimes in the millions, across the universe, the metaverse, not just within Decentraland. I think it's kind of hard to think how this will become valuable, but for us that are on Twitter already trading stuff and go to OpenSea and trade stuff, this is a virtual kind of experience where we can go in, talk, and trade if we want to. We can play games. We can hang out in a building made from an artist. The guy can rent my building for a weekend if he wants to, if he really likes it, and he wants to host his own conference, all on smart contracts. So I think, this is going to be, once the social community exists there, then the value proposition is going to be very clear.
Yeah, it really creates a market, for a seamless market for everything digital. That's a really interesting point. So we're coming up to the end of this panel. Thank you very much, James and Matty, for taking the time and sharing your insights. I feel very fortunate to be collaborating with the two of you in the pursuit of making the metaverse mainstream. One last point I'd like to share that I'm super excited about for the value proposition of metaverses in the long term is that the internet democratized access to communication. in the sense that anyone around the world can email Bill Gates or can email or contact on LinkedIn or on Twitter, Musk or whoever they want. But what the internet does not do is allow you to actually show up at Musk's office or Gates's office and be present. And I'm really excited. And unfortunately, if you are not in Silicon Valley or in Seattle or New York, your odds of getting a meeting with or you're in a financial hub, your odds of getting a meeting with big investors is much less likely. I'm super excited. The metaverse, I feel like, levels the playing field in terms of if you have ambition and you want to meet someone, instead of sending them a cold email and hoping for a reply, you can show up at their office and knock on their door. And so I'm really excited about it leveling the playing field for communication globally. But yeah, thanks James, thanks Matty for taking the time, and thanks Tat for moderating. I'll pass it back to you.
Awesome, thanks guys.
Thanks so much, everybody.